Good afternoon or good morning or good evening, depends on where you are. We are about to start our seminar on zero deforestation. So let's take a 30 seconds, 1 minute, so that we have people joining, and then we're about to go. And we have also our speakers that are getting ready. We're also online on Facebook as well, if it works. So I ask just my guys to tell me if our Facebook works or doesn't work. If it doesn't work, that's a problem. Okay. So if everybody's ready, I'm Pietro Paganini, I'm the Chair and Curiosity Officer at Competitor. Welcome, everybody. And good afternoon if you are in Europe, and I'm based in Rome right now, but wherever you are in Europe. But good morning to the one that are joining us from South America, or in any case, the Americas. And good evening from the many that I see are joining from Asia. And today it's a real global webinar of the Competitor series for the Tomorrowland, for the land of the future that we like to build, as we have speakers from, one is in Europe, one is in Colombia, and one is in Jakarta or nearby Jakarta in Indonesia. So thank you very much, all my speakers, for being here, and thanks very much for the ones that are joining us from all around the world. Our seminar or webinar today is called Towards Zero Deforestation, a Multilateral Global Approach for EU Policies. So we're entering the debate with our Sustainable Nutrition Seminar on the topic of deforestation. Why? Because tomorrow and then next week, two important consultations by the EU are closing, and they are focusing on deforestation. Deforestation and forestry in the EU, and deforestation and forest around the world. And Europe has taken an important lead, and honestly, and from a personal point of view, I'm very proud and very happy that Europe wants to become the leader in sustainability. And that's, I think, it's a great challenge, and I hope all countries can start following Europe. But in order to become sustainable, we have to first understand what we mean with sustainability. And we also understand that sustainability cannot just concern or regard the European Union, but has to regard everybody around the European Union. Because, of course, if we have sustainability only in Europe with a global supply chains, well, that sustainability will count zero. So it's very important that we engage everybody else. That's why we talk about a multilateral global approach to the topic of sustainability and to the topic of deforestation. The question that we want to address today is exactly the supply chains, the global supply chains. How can we ensure that the entire global supply chain becomes sustainable? And if we specifically focus, as we want today, on forestry and deforestation, what is the concept of deforestation once we are in Europe, or what is the concept of deforestation in other parts of the world? And we realize that when we talk about forest, there are different approaches, a different perspective, and different ideas of what the forest is, but there are also, of course, as a consequence, different interpretation of what deforestation is and how you measure deforestation. As a think tank that we're focused on policies, to develop policies for sustainable development, I think that we want to contribute to the European Union, to the European debate, trying to provide this multilateral approach and try to provide all the countries around the world, all the region, all the people around the world to impact on the European policies, because exactly what we said, we can't, as Europe, have a top-down approach to the topic and the concern of sustainability, but it has to be a bottom-up approach, and we want to be part of that bottom-up approach. Today we're doing this with, as I said, three speakers that are coming from three different parts of the world. One is in Jakarta, and it's Happy. A very complicated family name. I will read it later on, but Happy is a beautiful name to start our debate. We are all happy, and despite the pandemic. And then we move to Colombia, outside Bogota, where we have Javier Ortiz. And then we go back to Europe, and specifically Italy, actually not far away from here, from the University of Tuscia, and we have Tommaso Chitti. If you want to have a clear understanding of who they are, you can go on our website, and on our website you can find all the information about their bio. As you know, the rules of the game are very simple. Our seminars last between 45 minutes, maximum 1 hour. We want to prove that we're not entirely Italian and we can stay in the 45 minutes, 1 hour maximum. This is very Brazilian. 45 minutes, 1 hour is It's a very Brazilian approach to timing. So I will ask my speakers to be to stay in the time that we have discussed. This is a recorded event, so the event will be available on our website and on our YouTube page, and we're also, if I get the confirmation, available on Facebook as well. We go with the first round of talks with our 3 speakers, and then we can take any question that we have through Zoom. So please feel free to use the question and answer or to use the chat room, or if somebody, as usual, send me messages or questions through WhatsApp, and I'm not really checking my WhatsApp. So let's start, and I want to start with our first friend that is based, as I said, in Jakarta, and that's our Mr. Happy Taru Mandayanto, that is an independent FCC auditor and sustainable forest management assessor. And the first question that we have, or the general question that we have, is what is deforestation? How we interpret deforestation? How many type of forests as well we have? What kind of standards, if we think about deforestation, and criteria to measure deforestation we can have? And then if we have global supply chain, and if we have products that are coming from all around the world, which is the standard that we should use? The one that we established in Europe, or also the one that has been used in the foreign countries? So let's try to address some of these questions in our first debate. Our other debates will be following in the coming weeks and, of course, months, as the European debate is going to last at least for the next 2 to 3 years. So, Mr. Happy, we're very happy to have you here and very delighted. The floor is yours. I know you have some slides. Please go ahead.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak with the wider audience across the globe. And this is my very enlightening, and I think from the perspective of global community, the process of sharing of these sessions will be very beneficial for us to have lessons learned. Yeah. And I'm pleased to with this invitation to compare a webinar toward this zero deforestation as a multilateral global approach for EU policies. And maybe let me share to you the short presentations of my from my experience and lessons learned, to be able for you also digest what things are going on with the zero deforestation and what's happened in our region in terms of tackling combating the deforestation issue. Okay.
We tested earlier, so it should work.
Yeah, it should work. Opening the presentation. So let me check.
Wonderful. Make it big.
Okay.
So
bigger, yeah. I
yeah,
think
if
it's
you can
maximum.
make before we did the full screen mode, but otherwise it's fine as it is. Your floor, please go ahead.
Is it okay? Okay. So this is what the zero deforestation I want to address in my region, especially how we handle the zero deforestation in terms of the approach through the landscape approach. Therefore, the commitment to zero deforestation we have here in terms of in our landscape, the approach can go through the palm oil, coffee, forest, and other crops products. Therefore, the first commitment to zero deforestation in our country, in our region, especially through the forest legality assurance. So, if you remember that Indonesia and Indonesia in particular, and in general, the East Asia, Southeast Asia Pacific, the commitment of zero deforestation can go through the timber legality assurance, as each country need to have a commitment. And once they have the interaction with the European Union or European community, which is eco-sensitive countries, then the pledge of the zero deforestation approach need to be taken place. And then once we understand that the zero deforestation through forests approach with this the first level of timber legality assurance is one of the basic approach that we need to take place. Then we also need to discuss this with the further audience. We engage the stakeholders on how the timber legality assurance take place in our region, especially in my country. So for your information, that the timber legality or forest law enforcement and governance trade license was first endorsed to Indonesia. So Indonesia is the first country in 2010 or either 2010 2012 implement the FLEGT license based on the country-based FLEGT license. What does it mean? Meaning that Indonesia has to pledge and commit to the legality assurance by proving or demonstrating Indonesia commitment to the international community, especially for European Union or European community, what Indonesia has done and what Indonesia already commit regarding the zero deforestation from the timber legality approach. This is a long process of our approach to have the timber legality assurance take place and work in my region. So therefore, in our region, in Southeast Asia, we have Vietnam, Indonesia, Myanmar, and Malaysia. Others maybe China and Australia. Sorry, excuse me. Specifically in Southeast Asia, the commitment of zero deforestation from the very basic approach legality through the FLEGT license now works. Now has to be working and demonstrating to the international community. So this FLEGT approach is government to government efforts to devise a solution to improve forest governance and to address the illegality in terms of if there's some illegal issue of forest resources, especially timber. If you need, this is the way of FLEGT approach to understand and to see how much the transparency process and the forest management units can be demonstrating this basic information and this basic timber sourcing and sourcing of supply chain can be detected or can be determined through this FLEGT increase consumer awareness of the illegality of tropical deforestations, and then also approach a private sector desire to eliminate unfair competition. So it means that the private sector has to also prove and demonstrate how they produce the timber legally. And the approach of legality is through the government administration approval from the context of authority, and also a good of legal documents. So that's we have to coordinate with the government in terms of this FLEGT approach. And this is also acknowledgement by consumer countries of their responsibility. So from zero deforestation also not only touch in the forest-based supply chain, we also see how the supply chain also connect from the forest through a number of supply chain intermediary process from the forest until the end consumer products. So this is first the supply chain where the private sector responding to environmental campaigns, climate change, and growing corporate social responsibility commitments. And then growing public sector engagement, as shown here by New York to 2014 and Amsterdam to 2015 declarations. I think this is my first presentations. Maybe further comments or questions can be followed, and I have some more examples to be discussed later, and then I will let you know the process of discussions. Maybe I'm giving the floor to the moderator to continue for the further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Happy, and thank you for being here so late in the evening in Jakarta. We know it's evening, and you should stay with your family instead. You're here with us, and that's very, very appreciated, very much important. So there it's evening. Let's move to the other side of the, actually 2 oceans aside, or depending which way you go. Let's move to the South America or Central America, depending on how you want to interpret that. And we have another second speaker, our second speaker, that is Javier Ortiz, who is an economist, MBA, and specialist in regional development, and it's the coordinator at TFA for Colombia and Peru, and he's based right now in Colombia. So Javier, I know you have a presentation there for your Tropical Forest Alliance. The floor is yours. Try to make the presentation full screen. Here you go, and it's up now to you. We still see Happy.
Thank you, Pedro. Good morning, good afternoon for everybody. I'm going to try to be very short with this presentation to give you an overview of what Colombia is doing to reduce deforestation rate, especially focused on the palm oil sector. Yes, so just a brief mention of who we are. Tropical Forest Alliance, as you might know, is a public-private platform that is working with the private sector, the government, the financial sector, and NGOs to cooperate to reduce deforestation with specific commitments around the main commodity sectors. In Colombia, we're focused mostly in cattle sector, milk, and beef, in palm oil, and in cocoa, and we're working also with other sectors to establish commitments. TFA started formally in Colombia in 2017, basically promoted by the Ministry of Environment, that joined initially this as the first country in the region to join TFA, and then we started to work on the zero deforestation agreements for the sectors I just mentioned, supported by several countries, the US, in some countries of the European Union, Norway, Germany, and Holland, and others. This is an initiative as part of the World Economic Forum. Just to give you an overview, Colombia is just responsible for 2% of the total palm oil production in the world, but is one of the largest in America, or the largest in America, that accounts for 7% of the total production. As you can see, Southeast Asia is the largest by far production region, but we still have around 560,000 hectares of palm oil in Colombia with 6,000 growers. We export about half of the production we have in the country, with around 46%. And it's still a very important activity since it supports it's grown mainly in regions where we still have conflict in Colombia, so it supports employment for more than 180,000 workers. So it's a very important activity that also supplies not only edible and cosmetic industry, but also biodiesel in Colombia. As you can see, the palm oil industry in Colombia specifically has very low impact on deforestation. If you see in percentage, we are almost 0% as compared with the other countries in the world, leading Ecuador, Indonesia, and Peru, and Malaysia are the main countries that are responsible for deforestation linked to palm oil. So we are not really a country where palm oil deforests. Most of the palm oil established recently in Colombia is in herbaceous or pastures used for cattle that are reconverted to palm oil production, or substituting bananas and other agricultural crops. That means we have a large agricultural potential still to grow palm oil without touching the forest, and that is similar to other agricultural activities. This is not very updated, but we have around half of the country or more, 60% covered by forest, and the agricultural area in Colombia, or what we have delimited as the field to grow agriculture, is enough big to grow. We can grow up to 7 million hectares, from 0.5 million hectares that we have in Colombia to 7 million hectares, without touching the forest, just reconverting areas that are under pastures that in a large quantity are unproductive or are extensive and could be used more efficiently. I'm not going to take too time on this, but the palm oil sector, especially if you reconvert areas from pastures to palm oil, has a large potential to capture greenhouse gases in Colombia. And we have done several studies that show that if you reconvert pastures to palm oil, there's also a lot of increases in biodiversity and in other ecosystem functions. I'm going to stop a little bit here in the agreement. We started these zero deforestation agreements with the two main federations in Colombia, Fede Palma and Fede Biocombustibles, the Ministries of Agriculture and Environment, other government institutions, 35 palm oil growers that account for 37% of the total production in the country, 4 traders, 6 NEOs, and a couple of observers that are part of the agreement. And we're still growing and engaging more of the companies. We did an assessment from 2011 to 2017 with IDEAM, that is the MRV institution in Colombia, together with Fede Palma and Cenipalma, the main associations of palm oil growers. And in this period from 2011 to 2017, where we studied the impact of palm oil linked to deforestation, we found out that the deforestation linked to palm oil was very small. Only 0.4% of the total deforestation in Colombia, which is around 2,100 hectares in total, is responsible for the palm oil sector. Only about 4,455 hectares in all this period. In Colombia, deforestation is illegal from all points of view, starting 2011, different to some of the countries in the region and the world where deforestation is still legal and sometimes is allowed in a percentage of the farms, as in Brazil, in Paraguay, and some other countries. But in Colombia, it's absolutely legal since 2011. So as we saw in this analysis, or in this baseline analysis, we can see the responsibility of palm oil with deforestation is really very short in Colombia. Of course, we have a lot of challenges. As I mentioned, deforestation in Colombia is still high. We have around 2,100 hectares deforested each year. But most of this deforestation is linked to illegal activities, to illegal land grabbing, illegal logging, illicit crops, coca crops, illegal mining. So there's a really challenge with trying to legalize or to be able to reduce deforestation that is linked with these illegal activities. So there is a responsibility from the government, from the palm oil sector, also in sharing specific information of location of crops to be able to monitor this. And of course, we still have a lot to do in terms of MRV and certification mechanisms specific for each of the farms. We need to have the polygons of all the farms to be able to monitor this specifically and to certify and verify that there's no deforestation happening there. And of course, the main challenge is to go to these main routes or drivers of deforestation that are linked with illegal activity, which is very difficult to approach in a country with a conflict as we have here in Colombia. As you know, well, the world is demanding, not only Europe, but more countries in the world and more regions are committing with reducing deforestation in their supply chains. So I think that's really helpful that the European Union and other countries are establishing commitments to reduce deforestation, but we also need enabling conditions and support to be able to reduce this deforestation. It's not only commitments that impede the import of these products with deforestation or that are not sustainable, but we also need support to be able to accomplish these commitments. TFA has been working globally in a collective position paper with more than 120 private companies and NGOs to protect the world's forest and to give some input for the European Union. And we believe that what is required is a smart mix of measures. It's not only, as I mentioned, impeaching the imports of this product, but also supporting and enabling conditions that are necessary to protect forests. Some of them are having better monitoring and traceability mechanisms. This needs money and this needs technology. We need this legislation in the European Union eventually to introduce due diligence on companies involved in these commodity supply chains, but also to not simply not allow this to divert to other countries. As you know, China is also a big buyer, India, other countries. So we don't want these products that are responsible for deforestation simply to move to other regions. So this has to be also tackled and have in mind. And of course, we need investment. We need financial mechanisms to support sustainable reconversion in the commodity production systems. And of course, encourage better verification mechanisms, certification mechanisms, and report risk and risk mitigation within the supply chain. So this is the main conclusion. I'm not going to go further, so we have enough time for discussion, but this is basically the situation we are having in Colombia, and we believe that the palm oil sector in Colombia can be the first sector in the short term that can show that is zero deforestation for the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Xavier, as well as my greetings and thanks to Mr. Happy. So if you can just turn off your presentation, and then we move to Tommaso, who is here actually is here in Italy, in Viterbo, and is in the Department of Innovation of Biological Agri-Food at the University of Tuscia in the north of Lazio, not far away from Rome. Javier, meanwhile, you're moving away from your presentation. I really want to thank you because you tackle one, I think, tremendous point, very important. When you say the risk is that if there is a clash of legislation and not understanding each other, Europe and, for instance, Colombia or Indonesia or Malaysia or other country, the risk is that what is not compliant with Europe then will go somewhere else. And therefore, the effort and the approach of the European Union to go towards zero deforestation will collapse, because obviously producers will say not to Europe and they prefer to go to somewhere else. And that's something that European institutions have a hard time understanding. Europe is, if we take the Europe at the largest, we get 400 million people. Meanwhile, if we take China and India together, we are over 2.4.5 billion people. And if we consider we have 7.6 billion people in the world, well, it's a large market outside of Europe. So the risk is Europe established some rules that then nobody wants to respect, and therefore companies or producers will move somewhere else where there's less regulated market, and that would be a failure, a bad failure for our European vision of the future. Let me move to Tommaso. You don't have a presentation. That's not necessarily a negative use. So you have the entire floor for you. But the question is, given the two sides of the, let's say, the oceans, Indonesia, Asia in general, and South America and Colombia. What is your approach as a European to this? What is your understanding of forest and deforestation? Also, given the fact that you've been traveling around the world and you experience, the different stories.
Okay. First of all, Pietro, thank you very much for offering me the possibility to talk, to be in this nice event. We are in Europe. We are in the middle between the tropics, South America and Asia. In Europe, we don't have deforestation. If we are talking about numbers, since 1990 to 2014, the forest cover in Europe increased, basically roughly for an area such as the Greece. Nevertheless, we are responsible every year of the deforestation occurring in these two continents for a size basically around the Portugal, 10 million hectares annually. Why? Because basically we are not producing anything. We rely on the Europe, depends heavily on the agricultural imports. We have to think that roughly 1/5 of the crops and 3/4 of meat and dairy products are imported every year. And so this means that every EU citizen is basically responsible for the import of 1 ton of CO2 annually. Just to have another comparison in terms of deforestation, a French study pointed out that every French citizen is responsible of the deforestation of about 300 square meters per year, because it's using products which are imported from South America and from Asia. So this is a very important point. We are at the end of the 2019, just to face this problem, there was the Green Deal, which has this very package of policy, very ambitious. We want to make Europe carbon neutral within 2050. And then, beginning of this year, I think in May, there was this the European Commission presented some actions to protect and restore the world forest that were based on 5 main actions. First of all, to reduce the consumption and the footprint of product imported from other places, so to reduce the deforestation. Secondly, to work in partnership with the producing country to reduce the pressure on the forest and so reduce deforestation. To strengthen the international cooperation to head deforestation is also one of these actions. To redirect the finance to support more sustainable land use practices as well. And finally, the 5th action was to support the availability and quality of and the access of information of forest commodity and supply chain, supporting research and innovation. So if you are looking about emission removal after the Paris Agreement at national level, we are obliged to report the emission within each country. So we don't have to take into consideration the emission that we caused in the other countries. And so in Europe, forest is increasing, production is decreasing, so we are increasing our carbon stock. But nevertheless, we are responsible for the increasing of emission elsewhere. So we should encourage the European to eat less meat, dairy product as well. Or otherwise, we need to start producing in Europe. So increase the agricultural land in Europe. Forest is increasing because agriculture was decreasing, because forest is exactly growing on those land that were used for agricultural purposes. So we should convert this land and start to produce again within Europe. But this is, it's tricky, because then we will lose our carbon stock, we will increase our emission, and we will increase pollution too. So it's a tricky point. For this, it's an important moment, because the new CAP is it's coming. Next year it should be out. the forestry, I mean, the forest regulation is supposed to be out at the beginning of the next year. Currently, there is this consultation that will end up the 10th of December, involving different stakeholders that can express their opinion about the new forestry regulation. But so there are many things that are going on. But I mean, the Green Deal could offshore environmental damage to other nations. So we need to be very aware of this and be aware of the different aspects involved in this ambitious plan of the European Union. So as Javier was also saying, it could be very tricky if instead of moving to Europe, all this production would move in another place, because this doesn't mean to stop deforestation. Simply moving the product is the same that, as I was saying, we don't have deforestation in Europe, but we are causing a lot of deforestation at global level. So.
Thank you, Tommaso. And I see there's a bunch of questions that are coming. Also, some people are writing on my WhatsApp. I'll try to get everything. I see also there is a hands up. If you can actually type your question in the chat or in the question and answer, it would be much better. Before restarting our tour, and actually I have to go through question right away. But Tommaso, I have a question here, because when we start about standards, when we start about the definition, for instance, of deforestation, there is a lot of science behind there. But then when I go and look at some of the decisions that are taken in Europe, are not so much scientific based or are not so much evidence based. If I think about the RED II and the palm oil exclusion at the very end, and I want to go back to what Javier said earlier, you're excluding palm oil, but if you look at our topic, sustainable nutrition, the crop that is ensuring the best balance between nutrition, so what people need as a nutrient, and sustainability, then is palm oil. So you're basically kind of going against someone that is trying to produce sustainability on one side, and on the other side you are diverting this to other countries. Because if I was Indonesia, I would say, okay, you don't want my oil and I'm trying to be sustainable, then I will go somewhere else where they want me, where they don't care if I'm sustainable enough. So this is a risk we are occurring. What kind of approach should Europe use when coming up with the definition of deforestation, and particularly when it comes to standards? Which is the standard that we should use? Javier talked about due diligence. Should we employ a due diligence? What kind of criteria? Because there are consultation out there, but when I look to them, I'm like, okay, it's very tricky. A lot of interest. Putting a package together for Europe and for global supply chains, it's going to be tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly, Pietro, how to answer, because at the European level, I think we are looking at those products that are causing deforestation, because in Europe we buy those products, such as palm oil, coffee, leather, rubber. These are basically the main product. But then, you're right. Then, and these, I think, are the basis on which the European Union is basically measuring the deforestation caused by European Union, and so decide, okay, we have to avoid using those products. But then, you are right, you have Javier, that those products then will be produced anyway. In most of the cases, they will go only in another direction, not to Europe, but to other places. So we are not avoiding, but in some way hiding the problem. Yeah. There is no any particular study that is investigating. The deforestation, I think, is measuring that in that way. Okay, we are buying a certain amount of product causing deforestation, and we should simply avoid to buy them.
Wonderful, Tommaso. Let's go back to Mr. Happy and then to Javier as well. I start with the last question that we received. What do you think could be the baseline to consider in order to produce and sell deforestation-free products? And could we actually get to deforestation-free products, zero deforestation products? I'll start with Happy.
Yes, thank you. In my region, the zero deforestation can be interpreted through aiming through the meeting certain or defined standards. For example, for the palm oil products, once we achieve a standard of RSPO, then it can be part of the zero deforestation participation. When RSPO certifications be part of the zero deforestation considerations. And also we have the approach of a high carbon stock approach, where the zero deforestation is part of the important point to be implemented, and it relates to the how the high carbon stock approach also implemented for the smallholders or farmers. This is the important points. Once they want to have a business in palm oil, then they also have to consider to protect and to secure these conservation areas from converting from the forested into agricultural lands. So that's the different approach of standards, but we try to prove and demonstrate that we have the zero deforestation concept. It based on the it depends on the markets. They have choice whether they can have the verification process from through the high carbon stock approach or a high conservation value approach. And then if they want to have a more a wider audience or wider society endorse, we can use the RSPO as part of the standard towards zero deforestation products. In addition, we have some companies already commit to do the zero deforestation. They only want to involve, for example, the smallholders working in zero deforestation, and they have a carbon stock approach, and they also protect and conserve their area from the further deforestation problems. So far, this approach can be accepted as long as the consumer also they understand the process, and they know how the process of zero deforestation approach be part of the production process and commitment of the consumer or the producer to that zero deforestation. So in short, we have different kind of approach, different kind of standards, and depends on the markets, depends on the consumer, which one of the standards they believe. If they believe to the carbon stock, just go through the carbon stock. If they believe to the RSPO standard, just go through the RSPO. Somehow we also still work to improve how this zero deforestation can be wider acceptable in international community. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you much, Pak Happy. You mentioned one aspect that I want to address, that is the one of consumer. We spoke in the past about consumer in our sustainable nutrition webinars. Our next webinar should be on zero deforestation and labeling, how this can be communicated to consumers and how we make consumers aware. And earlier I mentioned the sort of science-based evidences, and often, you know, consumers are not driven by science-based choices, but by fake news choices. So that's something that we want to address for next debate. As before moving to Javier, and sorry, I take 30 seconds. Our goal here is not to provide a truth, it's just to provide a methodology for policymakers to take a decision and to give them some inputs. And today the inputs is to bring global voices to into Brussels. And you mentioned consumer. There is a comment here by Joan Espinosa that says, given that the EU is interested in reducing its global deforestation footprint, it's very important for industry and consumers in the EU to share the due diligence cost of assessing deforestation-free products. These costs should not only be paid by the producer, especially if they are medium or small producer. And this is certainly a very important point. Where are the costs laying? Javier, just another second, because as I said, we like to create a debate and not to provide one truth. And because of the debate, we have always some policymakers and politicians coming. Today, we have a bunch of ambassadors, and I have the ambassador of Colombia here in Italy that I want to thanks for joining us, who's Gloria Ramirez. And Miss Ambassador says, when the countries that do not recognize deforestation only change markets, EU is not thinking about create a difference between them and the ones as Colombia who do not need to deforest. All countries cannot be treated on the same way. So this is definitely a statement, an important one for discussion. Javier, the word is now yours. You've been anticipated by the ambassador, so.
Perfect. Yes, well, I think it's very important to understand that I think it's not a matter of reducing consumption of any products. I think we can produce better, and that's a very happy relation, producing more efficiently, which means being sustainable is not producing less. What we have proven in Colombia is, for example, we have a very low carrying capacity in cattle. We have only about 0.8 cows per hectare in Colombia, which is very, very inefficient. We can increase that with technologies, with silvopastoral systems, up to 5 and 8 per hectare. So, but that costs. So the point is not only measures that avoid importing product with deforestation, but I also insist in the need of enabling condition credit sector focusing in reconversion towards sustainable systems that are more efficient. We have a big gap in efficiency in production, and as I mentioned, the relation between sustainability and efficiency is direct. So we can do it much better in the same area or even reducing the area in Colombia. So it's not a matter of not consuming beef. I believe it's producing sustainably and producing much more efficiently. I think another message important is that I do think the political message that the European Union can give to the rest of the world is very important in terms of avoiding the importing of deforestation commodity production. Also pushing other countries to do the same, because otherwise, as I mentioned, this will divert the production to these countries. But it's an important political message that has to be supported by cooperation for enabling conditions, etc. I think we have enough technologies. We have RSPO and we have several certification mechanisms, but also technologies are improving very fast. So it's very easy to monitor where deforestation is happening. So the idea is that use these technologies and be able to trace deforestation along the value chains for consumers to be able to take intelligent decisions. So this is a couple of messages that I think this is very important, especially that productivity and sustainability go hand to hand.
Thank you, Javier, very, very much also for this last one. Productivity goes together with sustainability. So obviously, the more productive we are, the less land we're going to consume, because that's the end. The end goal is to provide food to the many people we are. We're turning around 10 billion in 2050. So we need a lot of land. In order to reduce the land, we need to be more productive. So invest in those crops that can be as productive as none else, but also providing them with sufficient tools to become and to be able to become sustainable. Just a quick question to you, Javier, because it's coming from an anonymous attendee. When you said zero deforestation in Colombia linked with palm oil plantation, does it take in consideration conversion of grassland that has been established years ago by deforesting? Tricky question, I guess.
When we speak about deforestation, we speak about forests. That's something that we will need to evolve. It's other natural ecosystems. We haven't yet monitored other ecosystems, which is something we want to do, because it's very important, the question, to understand that we're speaking about forests because it's the main problem we have in Colombia, as I mentioned, and in the world, of course. But that doesn't mean that we don't have any other natural important ecosystems, as natural savannas, as wetlands, as peatlands, as any other natural ecosystems that are also very important to tackle. But for the moment, we are working on deforestation, that, as I mentioned, is the main problem we have. Yes, the answer is we need to progress to also increase the commitment towards other natural ecosystems that are not less important than forests.
Thank you very much, Javier. And I think you mentioned primary forest. That's what you're talking about, or regenerative forest. You're talking about primary. Thank you so much.
We're talking about natural forests, not planted commercial forests.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. For what Latin was used to say, I'm in Rome, so I should speak Latin. Par condicio, equal conditions. We have Chaka from the Embassy of Indonesia, who is putting a question to all panelists. If the EU thought about themselves regarding deforestation, how about the thoughts and needs of the people in the forest countries? Sustainability should consider the three other factors of the local communities: social factors, economic factors, and environment factors. Tommaso, I turn to you. You are the Italian. We got a question, a comment from Colombia, one from Indonesia.
He has completely right, but I think it's what Europe is trying to do. I mean, with the even with the farm to fork strategy, of course, we realize that we cannot just there are other factors, social. I mean, if you avoid when we are talking about deforestation, we also need to think to the people that are living in the forest, indigenous people. When we are talking about deforestation, we need also to think about the people that are going to lose their work if their product is not imported anymore in Europe. So all these aspects are considered in the fork to food strategy. Farm to fork strategy. Sorry, it also was tricky.
They want to be cool, but we get confused.
Yeah, that is going to be out. In 2023. So, they don't want to be selfish. They are evaluating all these aspects and trying to do their best. It's a great opportunity, however. Things are changing, and we need to direct these changes in the good way, in the right direction.
Do you think Europe will be able to come up with a definition of deforestation and criteria, and therefore
I hope so, because I wanted to make a clarification about what I said before. Of course, Europe is pushing a lot also at scientific level on the production of very good products, such as all the Copernicus products, which allow for instance, for the monitoring of the deforestation. And there are all these satellite images produced for free and made available for the research go in this direction. They are putting a lot of money also on the research, going still in the same direction. So this will allow for sure to have a better definition of deforestation and all related issues.
Okay, thank you so much. Just very quickly, Happy or Javier or Tommaso, anything that you want to add to what we have said? Any last statement? Consider that our next sustainable nutrition panel will be instead on the side of the consumer. So what the consumer is aware about, how the consumer, and Javier, I think, mentioned an important point of traceability, how the consumer can see, can verify where the product is coming from. But on the other side, how can the consumer be educated to develop this awareness? So that will be our next sustainable nutrition panel. I hope we will have the same audience that we have today. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us. Anything you want to add, Tommaso, Happy, Javier?
Yes, I have a very important. I didn't have a chance. Sorry, Happy. Please. Just very few to speak about exactly what you were mentioning about ethnical communities that live in the forest. In Colombia, we have around 100 ethnical groups that are the owners of the forests. We really need to give solutions to these people for livelihoods. And the solution is not commodity production. The solution is giving them the tools to be able to live decently, preserving this forest, and understanding the relation between commodity production and all the services that these forests provide. That sometimes is a direct relation, and sometimes is a little bit indirect. if we don't have forests, basically the commodity production will be very difficult. We won't have water. We'll have climate conditions that are very difficult. So we really need to protect these communities, to support these communities in their cultures that protect these forests. So this is the last point that I want to stress in.
Thank you so much, Javier. Happy? Pak, happy?
Yeah, just a short further further explanation. I agree with Javier regarding protecting and we respect to the local community in our certification anyway. Either RSP or FSC or high carbon stock also consider the local community existing. For example, for doing the palm oils, we involve the smallholders. They might be the local community or traditional people want to get access to the markets. We help the local communities, the smallholders, to be able having to get the access by doing small and simple verifications. Once the simple verification or certification done, then the local and the international society or the consumer will realize that the products are from the responsible manner and toward zero deforestation products. So that's our efforts, especially when we respect the local community existence. And also in certification, of course, the customary rights and traditional people are part of our very strong considerations, how they be part of the process in the management process towards zero deforestation and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Happy. Thank you so much, Senor Javier. Thank you so much, Tommaso. There were a bunch of questions that I did not answer or I did not ask to our panel. I will forward them. If you want to talk to them, you find their bio on our website or get in contact with us and get in contact with me. Just a few things. This is very important. There's an anonymous attendee that would like to have our definition of deforestation. So Javier and Happy and Tommaso, if you want to send me your institution definition of deforestation, we will be happy to post it on our website. Regarding this, there is a EU consultation ending tomorrow about European forests, but there is more importantly an EU consultation on deforestation expiring on the 10th of December. So my recommendation is we will take part as an organization, and so therefore thank you very much for adding your thoughts today here. But to you and to all our attendees, to the many attendees we have today, and even the one on Facebook, if you want to contribute to this, if you want to help Europe to get to the right direction, please feel free to be part of this consultation and to bring and deliver your thought to the European Commission, and probably somebody will read them and listen to you. Thank you so much. I want to thank Stefano Sartorio, who's been helping me and the team to put together this panel. Thanks to Happy, Javier, and Tommaso. We are going to meet probably in January on the sustainable nutrition once more. With competitor, we meet in Italian next week on China, and then I think we'll take a break because we've got too many webinars. Thanks to all the attendees, to the many attendees that follow us, to the ambassadors that follow us, and to the debate that we had. Our purpose is to really shape up the debate. So thank you very much. Thank you to our panel, and I hope to see you very soon. If we don't see, happy holidays to everybody, and we will be able finally to defeat this pandemic. I think that's the best gift we can have with the new year.